Europe is signing massive trade deals with everyone except the United States, while Canada is drawing closer to China. If this continues, it won't just hurt our exports, it will chip away at the dollar's power and America's power with it. Welcome back. We've got some economic trade talk today. I figured I'd get away from just the viral clips and talk about some big picture stuff. Today we're going over how Trump has pushed our allies away from us and how this time it could actually hurt America. And before you click away, I'm a conservative saying all this. I support Trump. I voted for him 3 times. I'm just an honest conservative calling things the way I see it. Before we get started, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more honest analysis. And now let's get into it. So if you missed the news, yesterday the European Union signed a massive free trade agreement with India. The goal of this agreement is for the European Union to deepen trade relations with countries other than the United States so that they don't have to rely so heavily on us for trade. What does this deal actually do? It slashes tariffs on over 90% of products going back and forth from India to Europe to zero. India gets preferential market access, covering over 99% of electronic trade between India and the EU, preferential market access for Indian engineering goods. India has now signed 18 free trade agreements in recent years, and this one alone covers nearly 1/4 of the world's economy. This is massive for India, as they now have a real path forward toward competing heavily with China when it comes to technology and manufacturing. And as for the EU, this comes on top of other recent trade agreements that they've signed with Mexico, South American Economic Bloc Mercosur, and Indonesia. But all of it signals is that they are trying to diversify their options. It's not random, it's a strategic attempt to build alternative trade networks so that they are less dependent on the United States. And that hurts us because as other countries trade freely with each other, the less leverage we have when we want to get things done. During Trump's first term, we heard all the time that he was pushing our allies away from us. And Democrats were just absolutely dismayed that Trump would talk tough with our allies, and at times he would threaten to leave NATO. At the time, I never bought into that fear because when you looked at what Trump was actually saying, everything made sense. All he was asking them to do was essentially match their contributions to what we were paying on a percentage of GDP basis. Although the European countries didn't like being told to pay more, it made sense on a fundamental level. It was a smart move on Trump's part, and it worked out in the end. Because the demands were reasonable and understandable, it did not push any allies away for any long period of time. But Trump 2.0 is different. I don't know where he got the grand idea that trade deficits mean we are being ripped off, but somehow that's what he decided. So he comes in and he just slaps massive tariffs across the board on both our allies and our rivals. These tariffs didn't make a lot of sense. The stated goals of the tariffs changed constantly. Some were supposedly reciprocal tariffs, but that ended up just being a total lie. Sometimes the stated goal was simply to raise money, but then Trump would just carve out exceptions for all of the biggest imports that were coming in. The overarching theme the entire time was that they were meant to settle trade imbalances. But that makes almost no sense economically speaking because all tariffs do is make sure that other countries import less and buy less, meaning that prices go up on top of the tariff tax that consumers were already going to pay. Now, to be fair, the worst case scenario inflation that many expected did not come from the tariffs, but neither did the promised economic gains. Instead, we're getting a different sort of worst case scenario. Our allies completely circumventing the United States in trade. And the reason why is quite simple. If you're an ally, you can live with the tough negotiations that Trump brought in his first term. You can live with that. But you can't live with the total unpredictability that we're getting from Trump 2.0. So they naturally start planning for life without the United States at the center. And this hurts us economically in the long term. Trade deals are essentially just agreements about the who, where, and how. Who gets to sell, where they sell, and how cheaply they sell. When the EU signs big agreements without us, it means that their companies get the inside track in those markets, not ours. It means that those other countries get the inside track in the EU, not ours. And let me make this clear. The impact will be felt on our shores. US farmers, manufacturers, and service firms face higher barriers in markets where the EU or other nations have better access. Supply chains shift completely away from the United States. Companies build manufacturing plants, shipping depots, and partnerships where the trade rules are more stable, where tariffs are predictable. Every time we make ourselves look unreliable, we push businesses and governments to build a world where they don't have to rely on us. That means fewer exports, fewer high-paying jobs tied to trade, and less influence over the global economy. And with less influence in the global economy, was a loss of the dominance of the United States dollar as the global currency. Now, when I say the global currency, what I mean is this. Most international trade, loans, and reserves are priced and held in dollars. Oil, big commodity contracts, international debt, all gets dealt in dollars. What this does is give the US cheap borrowing power. It allows us to sanction adversaries by cutting them off from the dollar-based systems. It makes the United States the safe haven for economic assets during a crisis. The global power of the dollar depends on trust. Nations trust that the United States is stable. Their institutions are predictable, with the knowledge that we are at the center of global trade. What if blocks like the EU and India form, or the EU and all the economic powers of South America, or the EU and Vietnam, as they build big trade systems that don't involve the United States, it becomes easier over time for them to settle more in euros. The dollar weakens globally, the euro increases. Now, look, I understand that this isn't an immediate concern. The dollar isn't going to lose its status tomorrow, but it's like erosion on a beach. Now, one wave doesn't destroy a coastline, but years and years of waves will. If we keep pushing allies away, it looks like the Republican Party is going to follow in Trump's footsteps on trade policy and we accelerate our allies choosing on their own to move away from us. That's how you wake up in 10 to 20 years with a weaker dollar, higher borrowing costs, and less ability to use sanctions in foreign policy. It weakens us economically. Because our sanctions mean less, it means a higher likelihood we will resort to actual war in the future because we can't rely on economic sanctions to do the trick. Republican Congressman Don Bacon, who is my representative from Omaha, said last week that Trump has done grave damage with our European allies that will take years to repair. My first thought when I heard that was to dismiss the concern, as we heard that over and over again during Trump's first term. But a closer look at the facts, and you realize that Trump 2.0 is different. It's no longer just reasonable demands to pay their share of defense. He's now pushing for an unreasonable, unpredictable trade agenda that will ultimately drive away those same allies. You can love Trump's domestic agenda, as I do. You can love his foreign policy instincts when it comes to the military, as I do. You can even love his domestic economic agenda, as I largely do when it comes to removing regulations and opening up our economy for investment. You can love all of that, but still be able to admit this. If allies no longer trust us, they'll write us out of the future. That's what these trade deals are about. Trump 1.0 made allies mad, but got them to pay more for defense. Trump 2.0 is driving them to just write us out of the global economy. That is a much bigger problem. It's not being a rhino, it's not being anti-Trump, it's not being a liberal to admit when your own side is doing something harmful. Well, that's essentially what my whole channel has turned into lately. I believe that the most important thing for Republicans is winning elections. And I focus on and point out the things that hurt us in elections moving forward. And our allies moving away from us is a tool that the Democrats use against us in elections going forward. And I didn't even get to Canada like I teased in the opener, who just signed a limited trade deal with China to import cars. That's just a whole different discussion in itself. I want Republicans to win. I hope we win. I think we can win. But it requires smart trade policy. I don't know who has Trump's ear on this stuff, but now we have proof. The world won't wait for Trump to settle on a clear trade policy. The world won't wait and see if the next Republican president will follow in Trump's footsteps. Instead, the world is showing us that they are ready to move on without us. They're ready to make us just another trade partner rather than the leader of the free world. Thanks for sticking around and watching. Hit like, subscribe for me, and let me know your thoughts. Am I overreacting to these trade agreements? Is there a real threat of the dollar being weakened globally? Maybe I just need to sit back, wait, and trust Trump to get back on track. But this past year has been rough from a global relations perspective. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Hit like, subscribe for me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.